Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Building Science Digest. I'm your host, Christian Kennedy, and today we're going to talk about designing for sound control in the built environment with our guest, Stan Gatland. Stan, welcome back to Building Science Digest. You are the first return visitor that we've had on this show. It is a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Christian. Happy to be here again.
Feeling good? Ready to rock?
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall, the notion of sound control, we want to make it easier for us as people within buildings and the built environment to hear, listen, speak. Give us a rundown on what we're going to hear today.
When it comes to sound, it's a very personal experience. It depends on a lot of things. It could be age dependent, gender dependent.
Sure.
If you have a hearing disability, a learning disability, where you're from in the world, culturally.
Right. We talked
It all
about that.
makes a difference. So when it comes to creating comfortable spaces acoustically, you have to think about the surfaces in the room, surfaces in the building, but also what are the assemblies and systems that separate those spaces from other spaces, whether it's an adjacent room, whether it's an outdoor environment,
Sure.
so that you can stop unwanted sound or noise from intruding on your experience, or you are trying to keep things private and say a lawyer's room or wherever.
Like meeting rooms, all the
Lots of different
places.
things.
Yeah.
It's really about separating space and creating good environments for the activities that occur in those spaces.
Sure. You mentioned outdoor noise, indoor noise. What are some of the outdoor, I guess, noises, sounds that we try to prohibit or restrict from getting into buildings? And then from an internal standpoint, let's walk through those as well. I think we'll start with the outside, of course.
Everybody will get noise. It's anything that you find uncomfortable, intrusive, or if you're trying to keep your conversations private from going outside. So it's really about separation of the two environments in the way that you want to experience your space.
Sure, naturally. And then on the interior, right? So we've now, there's noises that happen within buildings, within home environments. What are those kind of noises? What are the examples of those noises? And then, some things we can do.
Well, in a home, it's, do you want to hear your kids or do you want them to be quiet in a different space?
Just hide them in the back.
Your appliances make noise. Your air conditioning system makes noise. There's things that make noise that you aren't aware of, that there's things you can do to quiet them down. In professional scenarios and open plan offices per se, it's a balance of keeping those spaces separated to a certain extent and also isolating them with different types of solutions. So especially in an open plan setting, it's about balancing the open plan area with the transition spaces, which are typically your walking corridors, and then your collaborative spaces, which are meeting rooms.
Okay.
So there's things you can do to separate that and also make it so that the culture of that environment does things that are beneficial to keep the sound quality
at a minimum.
To keep it comfortable from an acoustic standpoint.
Comfortable, I think, and that word is, you said it already, but different people have a different level of comfort when it comes to sound and in the built environment. On that residential side, you talked about that you maybe don't want to hear your kids. There's your dogs, outdoor noises. All right, the roads, the cars, the tires, whatever it may be. What things residentially can happen? Can a residential homeowner enhance or upgrade or update to minimize that noise or make it more comfortable for them?
So some of the same things you might do to improve energy efficiency help with sound control.
Oh, sure.
So if you have holes through your wall, sound energy is going to take the path of least resistance.
I love that you said it that way, holes through the wall.
So they could be small, okay? Look for where insects might be in your home, like spiders. They're getting through a hole. That's an air leakage path. That's a sound path. Sound energy will always take the path of least resistance, no matter how it twists and turns in a wall. So plug up your holes. A lot of people replace their windows over time. One of the things that most people notice when you replace the window for energy efficiency reasons, or if maybe they're just falling apart, you get the benefit of improved sound control, because they're most likely air leaky. Also, if you're improving your window, maybe you went from a single glazing to a double glazing.
Okay.
All of that improves the acoustics of the window. Earlier in my career, I answered a lot of homeowner questions. People would call and ask, well, how can I improve my wall? Can I put insulation in the wall to help with sound control?
Oh,
And
interesting.
you have to start asking questions. And the first thing I ask them is, take something like a piece of drywall and cover up your window first. If that dramatically improves what's going on, then replace your windows.
What a good example.
And then the next step, because it's really difficult to improve wall assemblies once they're built. Most people are not going to pull the drywall off,
Right.
change their framing, add things like...
You're not going to gut it and start from
No,
scratch.
maybe you can make it airtight.
Right.
You can have gaskets and outlets. You can plug holes through the wall.
There's different things you could do, but homeowners typically don't do that. What you mentioned...
No, it's too expensive.
Right.
And it's too intrusive to their day-to-day
But
lives.
windows seemingly get replaced most frequently. And you said that it could be, I think the biggest selling point, or what we hear as homeowners, is energy efficiency is the kind of first unique selling point of, hey, here's why you should get new windows. What you're saying is almost an unrealized benefit is
if you're
better performance
If you're
and
good
sound.
at selling windows, you're going to talk about sound control too.
Well, that's true. So Stan Gatland selling 101 windows is what we'll do next. But it's important to understand that you can go from a single pane to a double pane, double glaze, whatever it may be, and that ultimately enhances the performance.
Yeah.
And then the comfortability of the occupants inside.
Yeah. You get into commercial windows, and if you think about the materials that are used, glass is acoustically stiff.
Sure.
The frame is usually metal that's acoustically stiff. So when you get into those scenarios, you have to start thinking about, how can I break the structure of that assembly to isolate vibration, because sound vibrates the window, which then turns into airborne sound. So you have to structurally isolate the components to improve the acoustical performance.
And we talked about that a little bit before we started recording, about the thickness in the windows and having one be slightly thicker than the others.
Little things
that can go into
There's lots of
making it
design
better.
that goes into improving. You can change the number of glazing layers.
Right.
You can laminate the glazing so that it dampens the sound energy. You can change the gap between the glazings, make it deeper.
Okay.
You can have multiple glazings, go from 2 to 3.
Sure.
You can also structurally separate the frame. It all helps thermally as well. So if you've ever been to a recording studio, those where they have the windows that can see the musicians between the recording
Oh, right, like the
area,
ones in the movies. Yeah, I see.
those are extremely expensive glass acoustic partitions. Because they have multiple layers of glass, thick glass, laminates.
Okay.
The frame is probably 2 frames or 3 frames, and it's all isolated from the floor. They actually break the floor, so there's no direct contact. So it's actually a lot of detail into improving those
It's not just a window from one room into the other. There's so much more that goes into that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Sticking with residential, there's been a shift in the way that we work from our homes, right? There is more work from home happening now than it was before. What things are people possibly noticing now that they haven't? And then again, touch on the solutions or the potential solutions for that.
Yeah, so if you're doing work from home, you probably want to separate your work life from your day-to-day life the best you can. Having better separation walls.
Okay.
So most homes are wood framed. With wood framing, there's things that you can do. You can space your wood studs further apart from, say, 16 inches on center to 24 inches on center.
Okay.
You can put insulation in the wall, make sure the wall's airtight.
Yep.
Make sure that the door between the spaces has a seal when the door closed. It's not real common in most homes because we all have air conditioning systems.
Yeah.
And many of, especially the older systems, rely on that door undercut for the air to get out of the room
Sure.
and return to the system.
I can totally picture that. Yeah.
If that's the case, you have to be careful because you'll impact your thermal comfort in that space if you make that seal that door.
You're almost sealing individual rooms,
so
right?
it
Yeah.
pressurizes
But that allows sound to then also probably get through, right?
It allows sound to get in. There's things you can do.
Huh.
You can put special diffusers on the door, or ideally the system would have its own supply and return in that room.
Yeah.
That's the way you would want to design
Interesting.
from new. And then you can do things like add specialty drywall.
Sure.
You know, CertainTeed sells a product called Silent FX. It has a viscoelastic damping compound between the two thinner layers. So if it's a 1/2 inch of drywall, it's like a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch with this, I'll say, glue.
Oh, yeah. We talked about it.
It's a special type of adhesive that stays kind of tacky, so that
It's not super glue where
it structurally breaks
yeah.
the bond between the two gypsum layers.
by design.
By design.
Because that increases the performance.
And improves the performance.
Yeah.
And when we talk about isolating sound between spaces, we're talking about STC, sound transmission classification.
Yeah.
And that's for any type of separating assembly. So a wall assembly, floor ceiling assembly, a glazing system. So it's not just the glass, it's the frame, it's all the components.
It's so interesting. It's so interesting because you talked about breaking the system.
Yeah.
Right. And an example, even just in the room we're in, to shift to the commercial side of it, doing a lowered or a dropped hanging ceiling, if you will, but not having it. I think you were like 1/8 of an inch around the sides, and
Oh yeah, so
using a way
if
to
you're
break
trying
it so it's
to
not
isolate, especially
continuous.
impact noise. So there's
Yeah.
another metric called impact isolation class,
Mm.
and that's they drop hammers on the floor above to vibrate and excite that system, and then they measure how much sound energy in the air transfers down below. And so, just for a comparison, like a 4-inch concrete slab, a 6-inch concrete slab,
Okay.
has an STC value 50 plus.
Okay.
So 50 is a very good
Where does that
performance.
sit? Okay.
So just to give you a kind of a sense of scale, sound energy is not linear; it's logarithmic. That's why we have decibels.
Yep.
If you ever looked at a decibel scale, it's in logarithmic scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you improve the performance of a system, you have to do a lot more to get less. So if you're in the 50s, that's a very high performing system. 50, 55, 60, you're paying for a solution. So for an STC 50 concrete slab,
Right.
you drop hammers on it, the IIC value is like 20, which is horrible.
Yeah.
So you have to structurally disconnect the floor or the ceiling from that
Right.
assembly. So from a floor, you can do resilient flooring underlayments under the finished surface, like
Right.
a dense rubber mat. In Europe, they use a lot of dense fiberglass boards to
Okay.
cushion.
Sure.
If you have carpeting with a good pad,
Yeah.
that's really good at reducing impact noise.
Yep.
But a lot of design trends, people like hardwood floors, they like tile,
Right.
like laminates. So you have,
You're not just going to
you can
plaster
either-
carpets all
no.
over the wall.
So you're either going to isolate the floor or you're going to do something to the ceiling below.
Yeah.
And a traditional ceiling tile system that's focused on absorption in the space is not usually very good at blocking sound energy through it. Because there's either a 2x2 or a 2x4 grid
Yep.
that connects everything together. So in that scenario where you want to block that sound energy, you want to suspend
Right.
usually a drywall ceiling
Yep.
from that's on a frame that's backed with fiberglass, and then it's suspended with either hanger wire or specialty hangers, and then that system floats.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really float, but you don't connect the perimeter to the wall.
Right. Which is
that
so
you don't-
interesting.
So you don't have any sound flank the assembly and go
Yep.
down the wall surface.
So now there's a gap.
Yeah.
And
Say 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch.
Right, an 1/8
And then you have to
inch.
acoustically seal it. You can get acoustical sealant,
Right.
which stays tacky as it
Yep.
ages.
Right.
So
Not
that it's
super
got
glue.
some flexibility and it doesn't rip off the wall.
and then that prevents the sound waves
Well,
from
it is-
rippling through the wall and making it a louder environment or indoor room.
It prevents more of the structure-borne sound from going through the ceiling system and getting into the wall, and then going
Vice
out,
versa.
transferring into the air.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, a good party trick for people, especially with kids, and they sell these devices everywhere today, but take your cell phone,
Sure.
play a song in the air, hold it in your hand,
Right.
and then put it either on a hard surface table or just stick it up against the drywall,
Sure.
and it's louder.
Yep.
Because the vibrations in the phone are exciting.
They're bouncing off the wall.
They're exciting the wall.
Exciting the wall.
The wall becomes an amplifier,
Yep.
and then it comes off the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately think of if the music wasn't loud enough on the phone, I'd put it in like a cup.
Yep.
And then it, right?
A
it's
hard
louder.
cup.
A hard cup.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, not a koozie or anything.
No, not
that
a
wouldn't
koozie.
work. That'd absorb it. That'd be sound
Yeah.
absorption. Sticking with the trend of commercial environments, understanding where sound comes from,
Yeah.
how to figure out how to adjust or react to the possible increase of noise. Right? I think we talked about this before, but it's sound masking, speech transmission mapping are the two. Did I get that right?
For open plan office settings, first you have to balance your transition areas from your open plan
Yes.
space
Yep, we talked
from your
about
collaborative
that.
space. So if you take our headquarters, we worked with our architect as well as an acoustical consultant to really think that through, because it's about how the building is designed from a layout standpoint. All of our transition corridors are
Yeah.
at the perimeter of the building.
Yeah.
All the walkways are at the perimeter of the building. That's intentional.
Yeah.
All of the open plan spaces inside between the perimeter. And then we have, the building was designed for 800 people. We have 116 meeting rooms in the building that are acoustically isolated from the open plan space.
right,
So
yep.
all of the partition walls and glass,
Yep.
they're designed acoustically. So they're insulated, they're airtight, and the partitions extend all the way to the floor above, either that or the roof deck, and they're airtight. So they're as isolated as they can be.
Oh, sure, yeah.
To keep sound in the meeting room from getting into the open plan space.
Right.
Also, we have a highly absorptive acoustical ceiling. So it's a fiberglass ceiling. So it's almost as high as you're going to get from an absorptive standpoint.
Yeah.
We do have a thin, dense carpet. Helps a little bit.
Okay.
It's not drywall, but it's on a scale for absorption. We talk about between 0 and 1. We talk about a noise reduction coefficient value.
Yep.
It's between 0 and 1. It's a metric that says how acoustically absorptive your surface is to a product.
Okay. Got it.
It's a material specific metric. So the carpet's about a 0.15, and then we have workstations. All of the workstations have a fabric finish, and they go to a certain height, and then they have a glass extension, and that's intentional because we really thought about comfort. So acoustic comfort, visual comfort, so daylighting penetration into the space, as well as indoor air comfort and thermal comfort. By using the glass extensions, it has a dual purpose. It lets more daylight get in, but it also blocks direct sound.
Right.
So for most people, except for maybe the tallest people that work here, when you sit down, your head's below that glass partition.
Yes.
So when you talk, the glass is blocking a direct sound path to your neighbor and across the space.
Yep.
If you were to
Rather than it, well, I guess you were just about
so-
to go there, right?
so if
Yeah.
you
Rather
stand
than
up,
shouting to everybody.
then that sound goes much further. So that's part of the design as well. The partitions are like gauge steel. They have silent FX.
Yeah.
They're insulated. The doors have seals. If you ever close one of the doors and look underneath, they have a dropped seal on most of the doors.
Oh, yeah.
You may have not noticed before. It's all intentional to isolate space.
Isolate sound and space.
And then having a very absorptive space, then one of the things that we do is we add a little background noise. Okay, and the point of that is so if someone's talking at a desk, if you can hear them and you can understand them, that's speech intelligibility. So what we want to do is make it so that if you hear a conversation, that the intelligibility drops off within, say, 6 to 8 feet, so that as it drops off, you can still hear the person talking, but you can't understand what they're saying. So it just kind of blends into the background.
So it becomes more background noise.
It becomes background noise. So what we do is we add a little white noise to the building, just enough within what's recommended by noise criteria curve, okay? NC curve. So they have different values.
Yeah.
So you basically use the sound masking speaker, and we have 800 in the building, okay?
We have 800
Most of them you
the
can't see. They're in the ceiling plenum. The vendor that sold us that system tuned every speaker to that specific level, which is about somewhere between 46 and 48 decibels.
So it's not a frequency, but just a level
it's white noise.
Of
It's
noise.
like it's that.
You hear it now. Right.
If you're old enough to remember black and white TVs canceling out at 1 o'clock in the morning,
yeah,
it's that
just
sound.
Fade. Interesting.
So we raise the sound level just enough
yep.
so that speech intelligibility drops off quicker. We've actually mapped the whole building. We did a pre-post assessment of comfort for all 4 metrics that I mentioned before. So acoustically, we measured the background noise level with and without sound masking. The north wing of the building,
yep.
we mapped that entire space and determined when we turned off the sound masking, people instantly noticed.
So we did a little A/B testing.
We did it for a day.
Wow.
Did it for a day. People were not happy.
I can't imagine,
I got
right?
drive-bys. I got text messages, emails,
voicemails. What is everyone doing?
People were like, you need to turn it back on.
Yeah.
Because it went from acoustical comfort that everybody was used to turn it off, and you can clearly hear a conversation from one side of the wing to the other side of the wing.
And I think that's a great, the difference between what we're talking about here today, it's acoustic comfort, doesn't necessarily mean pure quiet, right, at the lowest level. It's about offsetting potential sounds to make it comfortable for the occupants as a whole. We're not looking to make it like a recording studio where you can't hear anything and it's sound absorption through the roof. It's the balance of, okay, what can we control? How can we minimize it? But then how can we counter that?
You need different soundscapes based on the use of the space and the activity. So all of our training rooms don't have sound masking because you want the highest speech intelligibility.
Right, you want the noise to travel. Yeah.
So they're designed with a lot of absorption, and that meeting room, the ceiling isn't as absorptive as the open plan spaces.
Okay.
So that you get a little reflection off the ceiling from the speaker in the front, so it gets to the back of the room. That's how you would do classrooms too.
Okay.
It's.
And we talked about like concert halls, right, as well? Similar style, or am I just completely off there?
Right above the stage, they have a hard reflective surface that's either curved or sloped.
Right.
And it's to help direct the sound to the back of the audience.
The goal in our training rooms is similar to a concert hall in the sense that we want sound to travel, we want intelligible sound to travel.
Well, yeah,
so people in the back can hear us.
Yeah.
And we talked about the white noise, and I want to, because that's something that is specific to us here in the United States.
It's primarily used in North America, and it's all got to do with air conditioning. Americans are used to forced air heating and cooling systems. Even if you don't have air conditioning, a lot of people have forced air heating systems.
Still have it, one way or another, yeah.
It's only recently that you see more and more air conditioning in Europe, okay? But even then, it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
They're not used to that
the hum
sound.
Yeah.
It's annoying to people in Europe, especially people in France.
Yeah.
And so, like, our global headquarters has
I found this so
radiant heating and radiant cooling. They don't have forced air heating and cooling systems.
Right.
And it's because that's built into their culture that adding noise to a space doesn't make any sense, and it's disturbing.
Which is so interesting to think about, right? Because here I don't necessarily say take it for granted here in North America, but it's something that I don't think about.
No, it's just part of our daily activity.
It's quite literally part of our daily activity.
Everything is air conditioned.
Yep.
Even in not as hot climates.
Like ours, sort of.
Well, you go to Minnesota, the commercial building has air conditioning.
Yep.
It's only on for a month, but they have it, right? So
maybe. Give or take. Give or take.
So
I think another story that had come up before, and you were on a podcast back in, I think it might have been 2019 with Buildings.com, but you mentioned a story then that really brings what we're discussing about to life, and I think it was surrounding a church. And I want you to take in a run from here. I found it just so interesting because it allows us and even the viewers, the watchers, to visually imagine and picture what we're talking about here.
Yeah, this was actually back in the 90s. This is when I got the call from, I was working for Celotex at the time. So Celotex made roofing insulation, so rigid polyisocyanurate foam.
Say that 5 times fast.
PISO.
There you go. All right, I could do that.
That's
PISO.
That's the roofing business says PISO.
Well, and that's what we're in, so we can say PISO.
Yeah, PISO. But they had a customer in Southern California, and they had just finished their building. They had our roof. So Celotex sold commercial roofing systems, and I think it's part of CertainTeed today. And so what would happen was, and this was a Korean Baptist church, so a lot of new immigrants to Southern California. So every morning, sun come up, and as the sun hit the roof started to expand due to that solar load.
That heat.
The heat.
Yeah.
The heat, the sun cooking the roof.
It expanded because
the
of
roof starts to move a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, the roof moving a little bit caused the facing on the surface, which is a foil, to start to pop and crack. Not a big deal.
Right.
But
you would think.
Underneath, there's no acoustical absorption or isolation. So that type of roof is fairly acoustically transparent. Morning service on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Half of the congregants are new immigrants.
Yep.
Not used to earthquakes.
Sure.
Very unnerving as pops and creaks and cracks.
Right.
So we
Or basically just happening naturally.
Naturally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So we actually flew out there, surveyed the space. At that point, there's not a lot you can do because churches are designed to look a certain way. So, and it's, expensive solutions. So they needed absorption or they needed isolation, and it wasn't an easy fix. If you're building a space that needs a certain type of acoustic experience, spend the money early because later on it's going to be maybe cost prohibitive and you can't do it.
All right, and I think that's a really good takeaway is even if you don't think you need it, you probably will, but do it before as almost as cost savings rather than having to fork up a bunch more money basically down the road when, hey, all your occupants or anybody are now coming to you as the building owner and saying, oh, shoot, it's too loud.
A lot of factors go into it because it's driven by budget.
Yeah.
The last things that go in before people move in are the acoustic solutions. So if your budget's getting tight, they start to value engineer, and that happens. So another good example is I was working with a high-end condominium developer.
Yep.
And he was trying to do the right thing. High-end condos, hardwood floors, tile floors.
So each unit or each condo was the entire floor, basically, more or less. Yeah,
more or less. And so to improve sound and also for fire, he had lightweight concrete floors. Great for airborne noise. Okay?
Okay.
People move in, you start to have occupants, one owner below an owner above.
Yep.
Person with high heels. Every time they walked across their floor, they could hear every step. There was very little that they could do, okay? Because now it's a residential building,
right?
Ideally. You don't have any room for changing the ceiling height. If you have
I suppose not. Yeah, I look up now.
If you have recessed lights, those are holes through your ceiling.
Right.
Okay? The fix was we recommended if you can get the owner above to put carpeting.
Okay.
At least in the walking path.
I thought you were gonna say maybe get the owner to not walk around in heels
No. But I mean,
send a letter or something.
That was probably the best that he could do was to offer to buy them nice
carpeting,
walking path carpeting.
Interesting.
To help with that scenario because
there's not a lot you can do.
There's not a lot you can do. You can't raise the floor.
Right.
You can always lower the ceiling, but if you don't have ceiling to lower,
then you're losing space.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Because all your cabinets are probably as high as the ceiling.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not easy, and it's probably not possible sometimes.
The difference in that example and a commercial example is quite literally that there are little to no solutions in that condominium type of environment, but in a commercial situation, there are solutions.
No, there's solutions. You just have to have them built into the design and construction
beforehand.
So he could have isolated the floors.
Yep.
He could have isolated the ceiling, but he didn't. He tried. He put lightweight concrete's good at blocking airborne noise,
but not
interior
impact noise. So real quick, are there other noises like that impact airborne? Are there others that are out there?
Well, you have mechanical noise.
Okay, from like
types
HVAC systems or something like that.
Think about you can buy quiet dishwashers.
I guess, yeah. Mine's not. Is yours quiet? Mine's not.
Mine is quiet because
Well, you should, yeah.
Doesn't mean everything in my house is quiet, but that was one of them. You upgrade your HVAC system.
Yep.
It's
make
not
that quieter, yeah.
Because they crank up the airspeed.
Oh.
So that means you hear more.
So it's actually the opposite.
You hear more diffuser noise, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so mechanical, airborne, impact.
And then there's the whole space absorption because it's a whole separate conversation usually.
Yeah.
You go to the movie theater, you have an acoustic ceiling, you have drapes that frame the screen.
Yep.
You have drapes all down the walls and the sides and the back. You have plush seats. Probably the only hard surfaces are the cup holders and the walking paths.
Right. And I think anyone who's gone to the movie theaters, we've all probably looked around the theater. I mean, I know personally, I've certainly recognized and noticed that, but it didn't click that is all there for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And then on the flip side of things, it's the cup holders and the walking surfaces are, I guess, literally the only hard contact surface areas that are in those movie theaters for, again, a reason. Stan, it has been amazing. Again, you are the first returning visitor. I can't believe you said yes to coming back on with us. It has been a pleasure. It's amazing to always have you on. Thank you for your time today. And to the viewers out there, thank you guys for watching and listening. You can watch and listen Building Science Digest anywhere you get your podcasts.